Retrieve the assembly completed in issue 20. Place the ends of the front stabilizer bar 21D in the highlighted holes in the front left and front right stabilizer links, 15F and 17F. Secure each end with an AM screw. Place a front stabilizer bar bracket 21C on the highlighted area of the chassis front left side member 20A. Secure the left end of the front stabilizer bar 21D with 2 AM screws. Place the other bracket 21C on the chassis front right side member 20C and secure the right end of the front stabilizer bar 21D with 2 AM screws. Place the front chassis cross member 21A on the ends of the chassis side members, 20C and 20A. Secure the parts with 2 BM screws. Place the front cover of the front cross member 21B on the front chassis cross member 21A and secure it with 3 IM screws. Position the steering rack 21E on the front left and front right steering knuckles, 15A and 17A. And secure each end with an MM screw. Check the correct orientation of the pivot marked on the steering rack 21E detail image. Insert one end of the fuel line 22C into the highlighted pivot on the fuel filter 22B. Position the fuel filter 22B over the highlighted holes in the chassis center and rear section 22A. Secure it with an IM screw. Retrieve the chassis assembly from issue 21 and connect the chassis front right side member 20C and front left side member 20A to the chassis center and rear section 22A. Secure the chassis front right side member 20C and front left side member 20A with 4mm screws. Guide the hoses 1, 20E and 2, 20F along the chassis center and rear section 22A as shown in the image. Cut 2 strips of about 1.2 and 3 cm from the adhesive tape 22D and use them to secure hoses 1, 20E and 2, 20F to the chassis center and rear section 22A at the highlighted areas. Start the assembly by placing the chassis right reinforcement 23B marked inside with an R on the right side of the chassis center and rear section 22A. Then place the left reinforcement 23A marked inside with an L on the left side of the chassis center and rear section 22A. Turn the assembly over and secure the left and right reinforcements to the chassis 22A with 6 AP screws. Connect one end of the positive battery wire 23D to the pivot on the starter motor part 2, 7G. Place the engine and gearbox assembly 11A on the chassis 22A as shown in the picture. To do this, pass the gearbox left casing 11A under the center section of the chassis 22A. Check the detail image to ensure correct alignment. On the left side, the left engine block support 7D should fit into the left cross member connecting piece 19D. On the right side, the right engine block support 6B should align with the front frame cross member 18A. Turn the assembly over and secure the engine with 2mm screws. Place the gearbox lower bracket 23C in the highlighted position on the chassis center and rear section 22A. Connect the gearbox lower bracket 23C to the chassis 22A with 4mm screws. Next, secure the gearbox lower bracket 23C to the gearbox with 2mm screws. Flip the assembly back over and connect the end of the fuel line 22C to the pin on the injector rail 9G. To finish this stage, connect the end of the duct 9O to the inner pivot on the steering pump connection 14P. Position the rear chassis reinforcement 24A in place. This step must be performed from the underside of the chassis center and rear section 22A. Next, attach the chassis rear reinforcement 24A to the right side of the chassis center and rear section 22A with 2 IP screws. Finally, secure the chassis rear reinforcement 24A to the left side of the chassis center and rear section 22A with 2 more IP screws. Begin the assembly by fitting the rear left wheel arch 1/25A to the left side of the chassis center and rear section 22A. Secure the wheel arch 1/25A to the chassis 22A with 2 BM screws. Place the rear left wheel arch 2/25B under the rear left wheel arch 1/25A. Finally, connect the rear left wheel arch 1/25A to the rear left wheel arch 2/25B with 2 IP screws. To begin, fit the rear right wheel arch 1/26A to the right side of the chassis center and rear section 22A. Secure the wheel arch 1/26A to the chassis 22A with 2 BM screws. Place the rear right wheel arch 2/26B under the rear right wheel arch 1/26A. Finally, connect the rear right wheel arch 1/26A to the rear right wheel arch 2/26 26B with 2 IP screws.